All right, we're all set. Board Member Beeman, Bill, could you test? Could you make sure you can hear us okay? Or Board Member Hemmings, can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you for the quick bio break. We are back on task, everybody. We will now review and discuss mailing A regarding a semaglutide compounding position statement with Staff Member Runyon.
Staff Member Runyon, just in case you haven't heard my voice enough.
It's the Runyon Day.
Stay tuned for this afternoon as well. So it's difficult to drive down the road or open Google or listen to the radio without hearing some sort of or seeing some sort of advertisement for semaglutide, Ozempic, Mounjaro, tirzepatide, etc. And in alignment with other boards of pharmacy, because of the increase in marketing for this, and the increase in utilization, and the increase in it felt it was necessary to create a position statement per board direction. So last count, 7 or 8 boards of pharmacy across the country have also done this. And this essentially represents an organ-specific hodgepodge of all of the verbiage that was in those statements. So there's very little that's organ-specific. And a lot of this is just lifted either directly from FDA guidance documents on compounding or FDA position statements. So I'll read the position statement in its entirety. And I partitioned this off into sections to make it a little easier to read and to make it more user-friendly. That way, when someone's on the website, if they're looking for a particular element, they don't have to read through the entire thing to get what they want. So the background is the Oregon Board of Pharmacy, here referred to as board, is committed to protecting the health, safety, and welfare of all Oregonians. Board staff has received inquiries regarding the compounding of semaglutide and other glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonists, or GLP-1s. Semaglutide, sold under the brand names Mounjaro, Ozempic, Rybelsus, and Wegovy, is an anti-diabetic and anti-obesity medication used for the treatment of type 2 diabetes and for long-term weight gain management, respectively. Demand for GLP-1 drugs has surged, and some are in short supply. This has resulted in some patients and healthcare professionals turning to compounded versions of these medications, often marketed and sold from online pharmacies that are not approved by the FDA. This can be risky, as non-FDA approved versions do not undergo FDA's review for safety, efficacy, and quality before they're marketed. The FDA has issued warnings about using non-FDA approved compounded versions of these GLP-1 medications. These non-FDA approved drugs may be counterfeit, contaminated, or adulterated, maybe contain the wrong ingredients or harmful ingredients. They may contain too much, too little, or no active ingredient at all. The next section addresses how can I determine if the medication is commercially available. The FDA does not consider a drug to be commercially available if it appears on the FDA's drug shortage list, the reference below, with the status of currently in shortage and not resolved. Can semaglutide and other GLP-1 medications be compounded if the medication is commercially available? The Federal Food and Drug and Cosmetic Act, or FD&C Act, prohibits pharmacies from compounding drug products that are essentially copies of a commercially available drug product. With another reference below, the FD&C Act and the FDA have recognized that a compounded drug will not be considered a copy of a commercially available drug product in the following 3 situations. Number 1, the drug has been discontinued and is no longer marketed. Number 2, the drug is not readily available and is listed on the FDA's drug shortage list. And number 3, there's a specific change for an identified patient whose medical needs cannot be met by the commercially available product. Of note, in this circumstance, the significant benefit that the prescriber identifies must be produced by the change the compounder will make to a commercially available product. That is, a change in drug product formulation. Additional considerations include if a prescription identifies only a patient name and a drug product formulation, such as John Doe, and compounded semaglutide, this would not be sufficient to establish that the prescriber made the determination described by section 503A, period B, number 2. Other factors such as lower price are not sufficient to establish that the compounded drug is not essentially a copy of the commercially available drug product. And adding additional substances, such as vitamins or minerals, to a compounded product that is otherwise an essential copy of commercially available product is not included in the FDA's list of circumstances meeting section 503A, B, 2 requirements. The next section is the compounding of semaglutide and other GLP-1 medications is permitted. How must it be performed? When compounding of a GLP-1 drug is allowed under the FD&C Act, substances used to compound must comply with the standards of an applicable USP or United States Pharmacopoeia or National Formulary monograph, if a monograph exists, and the USP chapter on pharmacy compounding. Number 2, if such a monograph does not exist, be components of drugs approved by the Secretary of Health and Human Services or HHS. Number 3, if such a monograph does not exist and the drug substance is not a component of a drug approved by the Secretary of HHS, it must appear on a list developed by the Secretary through regulation. With respect to semaglutide, there is no USP or NF monograph for semaglutide. Ozempic and Wegovy contain semaglutide base, hence only the base is a component of an FDA-approved human drug product. Therefore, no salt form of semaglutide is contained in an FDA-approved drug product. Number 3, semaglutide does not in any form appear on the FDA's bulks list for compounding. So for this separate and independent reason, no salt form of semaglutide may be used in a compounded drug product. If a pharmacy obtains semaglutide base for potential compounding use, the pharmacy must ensure that the API received is a pharmaceutical grade product accompanied by a valid certificate of analysis and is sourced from an establishment registered with the FDA under section 510 of the FD&C Act. Therefore, research use only products or products produced by establishments which are not registered with the FDA may not be used for compounding in any circumstance. And in conclusion, the board is charged with protecting the public. Therefore, the compounding of semaglutide and other GLP-1 drug products in a way that fails to conform with governing law or the dispensing of such products may lead to enforcement action by the board. And we have references below. And President Chin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. You will need to a motion on this, so I'll do a round robin to see if there are any questions. Starting with Board Member Kirkbride.
The only question I have is under additional considerations. You reference section 503A(b)(2). But I might have missed, or I don't understand how that's connected, or like, it seems like an orphan reference kind of, so like, and even when I look in the references, I don't see that, so maybe I'm missing what that is, but maybe if we could make more clear above section that might help.
Staff member Runyon, staff member Melvin, could you scroll up?
Yeah.
To that?
Right there. What she's talking about. Scroll just.
So as I'm reading it, I don't know what that is referring to, because I haven't read that in the document earlier, what that is, without going to every reference and figuring out, well, what are they talking about?
So if we look under the heading, can semaglutide and other GLP-1 medications be compounded? It's actually a component of those regulations. In the text itself, it's just listed, I believe it's with an asterisk at the bottom, and it outlines the additional 3 things below that under additional considerations. I just provided them in a list as opposed to a paragraph, which is included in the guidance document itself. I can try and pull that up. Give me just a moment.
Layman's terms. Compounding pharmacist terms, what does this mean to somebody who isn't a compounding pharmacist? Don't get, I mean, or say the public who's looking for safe alternative from all of the CRAP that is out there. Does this help the public at all?
Staff member Runyon. I think, and it's my personal opinion or conjecture, that it would, in highlighting the fact that not all pharmacies that are promoting this, that are providing this, are necessarily doing it the correct way. I also believe, because it hyperlinks the FDA position statement on the potential ramifications of using compounded products that are not FDA approved, that it would provide patients with another reputable resource, which may encourage them to do further research before ordering something online from a pharmacy that's, I won't name the state, but a pharmacy that's not here. So I believe in that respect, it does provide a specific benefit to patients in that it makes them aware that not all of these products that they see are necessarily FDA approved.
How would a member of the public find out if what is advertised is FDA approved? How do they do that due diligence?
Staff member Runyon, I think there are multiple ways that they could do that, but that also, the question itself also highlights part of the difficulty in the regulatory models right now. I think the concerted regulation, the concerted interstate regulation of this is lagging behind the issue itself. And I think position statements like this, and I think bringing this up at NABP meetings, for example, kind of helps facilitate the harmonization of those efforts. So they're more concerted. One example might be, if I were a patient and I was concerned, I might ask, the compounding pharmacy or the location that I'm getting that from, if they're registered. I might also use the license lookup on the board's website, the Oregon Board of Pharmacy's website, and to determine if the compounding pharmacy or the institution that I'm getting this from is registered with the board, and might be option number 2. Those are ones that is just right off the top of my head.
I'm seeing as a public member and the Board of Pharmacy being there to protect the public. This position statement is really helpful for people who are compounders. But is there maybe a guidance statement to the public looking for, how do I get safe medication in this crazy world that we're living in? And I don't know if we're able to do that, but that, for the public, would make be more useful. And I don't know I don't know that we've ever done anything like this, as a on our website for public consumption. What do the public look on the Board of Pharmacy for? I don't know if the Board of Pharmacy's got any questions from the public. How do I figure out just a safe non-prescription, well, they're all prescription, but safe. I know that there are so many unsafe practices out there, and I don't know how a public person figures out what's safe or not when all they're looking at is ads.
staff are running, I'm in agreement with that. I think it again highlights why this is a growing concern for all the regulatory bodies. And I am aware of instances, just reading online, for example, I'm aware of instances where patients are unable to verify that the company from which they're receiving products is registered with the state from where it originates. I don't know of any guidance document from any other state that directs patients through a flow, if you will, on how to determine whether or not the entity's registered with the state, it's registered with the state in which it's doing business, and registered also in the state that it's shipping to, or that it's receiving products that are, pharmaceutical grade, and that it meets all of these requirements. I'm not aware in sifting through all of the other statements from the various boards of pharmacy, state boards of pharmacy, where anyone's addressed that specifically. It's something that we could certainly consider. I think I might defer to council on that and what that statement might look like or could contain, because I think we would be skirting the line between providing information and we don't want to be accusatory in any way.
But just maybe a guideline on how to even begin the research of it is, I don't know. I'm just thinking that this is a great position statement, but it is a position statement for those who are in pharmacy and not for any public facing person. Yes,
Board Member Kruger, it looks like the Washington State Pharmacy Commission had a very similar statement, but they also included a link to the FDA's webpage, medications containing semaglutide marketed for type 2, which does give a bit more consumer facing, why this is a concern, etc. So they added that part to their statement, which I think was published August of 24. So, I mean, I think our statement is pretty much, the very, very similar, except for the notice to consumers, patients, which Washington included. So I think that may help with your concern is linking that FDA webpage within our guidance document. And then maybe we're in no legal gray area when it comes to
that would be perfect. I think, just in how, maybe under how I can determine if the medication is commercially available. I don't know if that would be a good place to put the information, like preparing for, blah, 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 blah. But, and we don't need to, I don't know if we can change the draft statement or add something to the draft statement.
Staff member Melvin is going to pull up a Word version, so we can try to amend this in real time.
Well, or yeah, I was gonna say that, actually, when Gary was asking me about this, and I read it, and I was like, well, it's pharmacist, this makes no sense to me. But I was like,
Ergo, my position.
right, yeah. So I think that that was sort of what was the sort of intent of the statement, right? Was it to just help pharmacists, or was it to sort of be an overall thing? And it's totally fine for it to be an overall thing as well. And I think you could easily just say, you're good with this statement and you want Gary to amend it to include, basically, if you are a consumer, click here, and then have it go to, something like that. And maybe in real time right now, we can click here on whatever that link is to see what it is, and then the board can just direct him to make that change and then vote to adopt it without having to edit it in real time.
In the motion, she can just say as revised.
The motion is amended.
Yeah, or as
Right.
revised. Yeah.
Are there any board members, I mean, this is me speaking, and board member Kroger, being able to do in a real time, edition, and are there any concerns of board members adding something that might be for public on at least where to get information.
Right, I'm fine with the addition. I just don't know that patients are gonna make it to our website or wherever this is posted to get it. I have no problem with the addition. I think it's unrealistic to think that we are gonna have, a good way to get this out to the public. So I'm fine with making the addition. I don't know how much impact it's gonna have on the everyday patient who's searching for it. I know I've done this search with a family member and there are patient advocacy organizations. If you Google, should I buy semaglutide from an internet pharmacy? You will get organizations that refer you back to, you should be buying commercially available products. And so that it is out there in the internet world, and I think maybe adding the suggestion board member Kroger had highlights that in our document as well. I don't know that a lot of people are going to access it.
Board Member Joyce, real quick. Is it too strong of a statement to say the Board of Pharmacy does not recommend the use of compounded GLP-1 medications? That by putting it in writing, the board does not recommend the use of compounded GLP-1 medications. And then you could say based on.
I'm gonna say that, yes, that would be a problem, but the pharmacist people can talk.
Board member Kroger, I would not feel comfortable adding that statement.
Board member
Board
Beaman, I
member
would not
Pat-
feel comfortable
No,
with
I would. Board member Patel also, no, because the NABP, every other authority, they said like, yes, you can do it as long as the active ingredients is obtained by the FDA approved facility, is not salt farm, and it is on the shortage list, and by God, it is on the shortage list.
So if they follow
demand,
everything
that's
that's
fine.
in the position statement, then you can actually compound this. And so, but there are people who are bad actors and not following these guidelines and using salts and using animal use, not for human consumption, but hey, you could have it. So yeah, no, we wouldn't, I don't think that would be part of it.
Where are these being compounded at? What? Any in Oregon, right? None, right? Because they're technically a 503A.
Staff and running, I've read reports and done some personal research that has identified the compounding of these all across the country, from compounded pharmacies that are in Florida, for example, that are in Maine, that are on the East Coast, the West Coast. And I've read reports that indicate that not all of them are properly licensed. So it's an issue across the board. It's not isolated to any particular state.
So were we able to find that FDA? If nobody else feels strongly about putting that there, then it doesn't need to be there. That was just. I think about our mission statement and just trying to be a little bit thoughtful about if that's our mission, then at least having something that addresses the public. Yes,
Staff member Ekman, I just wanted to raise one other point for the board too, when looking at who is the audience for this. Remember too, it's not just pharmacies that can compound, practitioners can compound too. So this messaging will be shared with other health boards that could then relate this back to their licensees too. So there is a broader kind of scope of how this could be applied to other parties to help inform.
so thank you. I think I need to open another business. Who wants to help me? If you talk to someone else, we're in public session. We'll do it in a social session.
Staff member Runyon, I do have the FDA guidance document pulled up. Staff member Melvin suggested that we could potentially bring this back after lunch. So we can project it on that screen and take a look at it.
That the FDA's concerns with unapproved GLP-1 drugs used for weight loss. Reference, that's the one that.
Staff member Runyon, I do see that from the Washington Board of Pharmacy you're referring to. I'm also referring to what board member Kirk Bragg brought up and seeking clarification about those additional considerations for compounding. So can bring both of those up. if you like.
Let's do that. We can make time. Thank you. Take a 1 hour break. It's 12:07. We'll meet back at 1:07. I don't see lunches. It's coming. And you, you already know the drill. Good to see you there.